Today we're going to talk about setting up an easy deep water culture system. You can do this with a few basic items. Some Hydroton 5-gallon bucket, a net pot, some expanded clay pebbles, an aquarium air stone, some air tubing, an air pump, a drill, and a bit, some water, and some nutrients. First thing you're going to want to do, measure out your clay balls. You can see how much dust is on these, so really you want to rinse them off first. The dust is inert, it's not really going to hurt anything, but it is going to make a mess of you and your system. So best to rinse them off. I like to measure them out first because don't need a whole bunch of extra clean ones laying around because they're just going to get dusty again as they sit there. Run some water through there. I like to run them through a strainer. I really like to get my hand in there and rinse them off. Get all that dirt and dust off of them. And make sure that there's nothing foreign in your clay balls as well. So once it starts running clear through, you're good enough. Next thing we are going to do is we are going to take a bucket. That bucket is going to be the reservoir for your nutrients. So we want to take a net pot. We want to find the net pot we're going to use. I like to drill a hole in the top of it for the air tube. I guess you could run the air tube down through the center of the net pot, but I just always found it easier to drill a small hole on the side, just big enough for my air line to go through. Then I want to get some air tubing. You want to stick it through the hole, pull it down to the bottom of your bucket so that you get a proper length. You want your air stone to be towards the bottom of the bucket. Keep in mind that as these plants grow, the roots are going to fill your reservoir. People get surprised at how much it is filled by roots, but it will get filled. You can use a smaller air stone like this, but I like to use a bigger air stone for a 5-gallon bucket just because it provides a lot more air. Any small air pump from your aquarium that's appropriate for a 10-gallon fish tank will be fine for your hydroponic deep water culture system. You're just basically going to connect your air hose to that on one side, connect your air hose to the air stone on the other side, and let her rip. So once you get an air stone connected, you get your length set up. You want to decide what net pot you're going to use. We're going to do an herb garden. We're going to have several different types of plants. We're going to use the larger net pot. The smaller net pot like this, you can use for single plants like a tomato, a pepper, something like that. What I like to use is this pretty nifty little graduated cylinder over here. First thing we're going to do, actually, though, before we get to that, is we are going to fill up this bucket with water, and we are going to mark where the bottom of the net pot is. Now, initially, you want your water to cover the bottom of the net pot. You want it to come up into the clay balls. That will allow the clay balls to take on some water through capillary action. They need a little bit more water in the beginning until the roots grow down through the net pot into your reservoir. Once they get to that stage, you don't need as much water in your system. But I do like to fill it up. I like to pour through it so that I can see when it gets over the bottom of the net pot. Once that's done, go ahead and take your net pot off. I like to mark it with a Sharpie where the bottom of the net pot is, where the water level is. That way it just makes it easier for me when I'm filling and changing water and stuff like that. We made a graduated bucket here. You can see it's labeled for gallons 1 through 5. You can see how to do that in my cloning video. I walk through how to make the graduated bucket. Pretty simple process. Mark it at the net pot level. First, we're going to use one of these. I like using these graduated cylinders. You can pick them up on Amazon. They're adjustable. I like Botanicare Nutrients, Pure Blend Pro for leafy green stuff. I like to use Botanicare CalMag to add a little calcium and magnesium. We just throw a dash into it. I like to use a little bit. My water out of the tap is high in calcium. I actually use a mix of tap water and reverse osmosis / DI water. I like the little bit of buffer that the tap water provides for pH. Because I use a mix like that, I don't have wild pH swings. I found when I used pure DO water and RI water, or pure DI water and RO water, I had a hard time with pH fluctuations, especially after it was a week or so old. So I like to use a mix. You're going to have to find your mix, what works. I mean, everybody's water is different, so it's real tough to tell you what type of mix you want. For me, it's about 50-50. So here we are. We're going to take, I've already started these plants in some rock-wool cubes. We're going to take the plastic sheath off the rock-wool cube. You don't want that on there when it's in your apparatus. Now, we're going to want to fill up around these rock-wool cubes. You, in theory, could just set them on top and they will eventually grow down in. But I like to keep the cubes surrounded by the clay balls. I find that it just helps the plants take hold initially and really works to your benefit. Doesn't hurt anything, is what I found. So go ahead, we're going to arrange our herbs here. I think I've got some basil and some cilantro, a little bit of thyme, and some parsley, I think. So as I said, we're going to fill it up around these. We're going to get it to a point where, they've got something to grab onto as the roots grow. That's really where you're going to want to be. So again, as I said, I'm topping it off. You could even cover the rock-wool cubes. Don't need to. As I said, you can even set them on top of the balls. But I like to fill right around to the edge of the top of the rock-wool cubes. I find that works good for these type of setups. So next, what we're going to do as we get them all in, be careful with your plants. I've seen people crush their plants as they put them in, and it just does not make for an easy transition for those plants. So next, what we're going to do is put our air tube through. We're going to connect it to our air stone. As I said, I like using a little bit bigger air stone in a 5-gallon bucket, especially when I have more plants going. You're going to stick your tube through, pull it down to the bottom, connect it to your air stone. Next thing we're going to want to do is connect it to your air pump. Air stone is really critical. You need your water to be aerated. You need some oxygen in that water. That oxygen gets around the roots and allows the roots to grow. Yes, I know, but yes, roots do use oxygen. So next thing we're going to do, I like to label. I just use a little P-touch and put a label with a letter near the plant that I have in there, just so I know down the road. If you're growing plants that are really different, you definitely do not need to do this. So, plug her in, let her rip. If you have found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and check us out at growwithhydro.com.